And welcome back, footy fans, to another episode of Donnie's Disposals. I am your host, Coach Donnie Hess, here back with another AFL round review slash AFLW round review. As the fun part about both competitions going at the same time, I want to be sure to give both the women and the men their kudos. So I'm going to combine the episode and talk about both the men's and the women's. And joining me today, a very good friend. I'm so excited to have her back on, and so excited that These Ladies podcast is back. The Chicks Talking Footy. We have Fiona Newton. Fee, it is great to see you.
It's great to see you as well, Donny, and it's always a pleasure to connect with you. We've been, I think we've been chatting for 9 or 10 years now, so
Mhm.
we've become great friends.
Yeah.
It is, as you say, the men's and women's footy is playing at the moment, and there's been, I think, 18 games played over the weekend, so we could dissect all of them. By, from blow by blow. No, we're not. We won't really do that, but it's certainly lots of footy to digest.
Yeah, as you say in the episode, we love talking footy. We could talk footy for days. So it's
That's right, all
absolutely
day.
it is absolutely I'm 100% with you. If I could do a 2.5 hour show and talk about every single game blow by blow, I would. But that is a long episode. That is a lot of games to keep track of. So let's condense it a little bit. So as I usually do when I do these combined episodes, we will give the results of each of the men's and the women's competition, and then highlight a few games that we really want to talk about. But before we get into the blow by blows a little bit, just really quickly, your thoughts as a whole of round 24 in the men and round two of the women.
Yeah, firstly, the men's, it was the last round of the season. So they've changed the ladder in the AFL, which has been a bit controversial this season, where we've got the top six that automatically make finals, and it used to be the top eight. And now there's a wild card part of the ladder. So the next four teams, 7 to 10, play off in a wild card round, which is going to happen next week. And I kind of looked at the ladder last week and thought it's pretty much fixed who's in the top six and who's in the wild card round. But little did I know there was still some adjustments to be made. And one of the big adjustments was Melbourne losing to the Bulldogs. That meant that Melbourne's going to play in the wildcard round, in the fixed finals series, and that adjusted things quite a bit. So that was an exciting game. One of the great stories of this season is that Carlton obviously were losing badly all season. Michael Voss, their coach, inverted commas, was retired, and then Joss Fraser took over, and they've won 11 games, lost 2 and drawn 1 since he took over. So it's a pretty amazing rise that they've had, and they beat the top team this week, Freo in the round. So that was a big upset. The other game that I thought was exciting, and look, I am a Hawks fan, so I am biased, but Hawks were playing the Eagles. We put ourselves in a position where we were fighting for third place on the ladder, which we had for a long period of the season. And unfortunately, we drew to the Pies the week before, so we were fighting hard against West Coast to beat them by 90 points or more to be third on the ladder, but we didn't quite make that margin, but we did beat the Eagles by 67 points to give us a top 4 position, which is the first time we've had that since 2018. So lots of little movements around both of those places. And next week, of course, we get to watch 4 teams play off for a position in the finals.
Yeah, no, the men's was interesting. Like I said, a couple of results. I'm interested. Did Frio take Carlton off? Did Frio kind of put the cue in the rack a little bit, shall we say, and take that time off? And then just I want to highlight really quickly over in the women's some results I was not expecting. Like legitimately sitting here going, when I looked at the results, was like, are you kidding me? Like Geelong absolutely smashing St. Kilda by 85 points was absolutely insane. And just I'm a little shocked. The Adelaide Crows are 0-2 to start the season. So it was very, very interesting. Cannot wait. I know we'll discuss a few other things as we go through the emotion at Sydney at the SCG. I think is something we can definitely talk about a little bit too. So let's hop right into it. Again, I am a gentleman. So let's cover the ladies first. Let's start off in the W. I'll give the results and then we'll highlight a couple of games real quickly. We'll start off at the Mission Whitten Oval as the Bulldogs get an impressive little win over the Richmond Tigers 48-37. The Suns stun the West Coast Eagles out west with a 35-point win 69-34. As I said, the Cats smashing the Saints by 85 100-15. The rematch unfortunately was just the same as North continue their win streak, getting a win by 11 up in Queensland 44-33. The emotions are high and the fans show out at the SCG as the Swans get another win to start the season 66-42. Wyalup beat Collingwood by 20, 50, 30. Melbourne get a win over GWS 60-12. Carlton stunned the Crows at Icon Park with a 50-23 win. And your beloved Hawks get a win over at Alberton Oval over the Port Adelaide Power 65-33. Really quickly, I want to go to it just because I know this is something a few people have wanted to talk about, and I'm having Fee on here is fantastic. Um, with all of the events of the week, I just really quickly want to go to it with the Sydney Swans. I know the men's club is embroiled in all of everything that's going on, and again, I want to be considerate to the victims, considerate to the situation, and considering this is still an active and police investigation. But for you, Fee, how great was it to see the Swans fans show up for the women and to give them the support that they did? Over 16,000 showed up to support their women's team, and the women's team gave them quite a show getting a win over the Bombers.
I guess when you got to think that these women and men teams exist in the same workplace.
Hmm.
So something we often forget about footy is that it's a workplace. The football field and the football
100%.
clubs
Yes.
exist in a workplace. So you can imagine how you would feel in your workplace if the men that you worked with every day, that you had a close relationship, that you trained or did whatever
Hmm.
you do in the same physical space, accused of sexual assault, of mistreating women, of cheating on their fiancés, and you are working with these people in close relationship, how much that might make the women in that workplace feel unsafe.
Hmm.
And the women's team are in that position. So one of the beautiful things that comes out of these stories, of course, because it was a horrific week, it really was for, I think,
Hmm.
women and people that, probably Swan supporters who feel passionate about their club. It really rattled everybody, I think, this story, in a way I haven't seen a football story do in a long time. But there's always beautiful human stories that come out of it. And one of them was that the real intent that people went and watched the women's game in response, to
Hmm.
really show the women we're behind you, and some people didn't stick around for the men's game; they just
Hmm.
didn't feel that they could afterwards. But one of the beautiful things that came out of that game too was because it was a double header, and as we know, I think there's 5 double headers that are
Hmm.
happening. So AFL has finally listened to fans and said, yes, okay, we'll do double headers. Is the men, and what timing, I think, with this one, but the men at the end of the game just broke down in tears together.
Hmm.
Callum Mills and Dane Rampe, you see them all just crying together in the middle of the football field. And I think one thing we haven't recognised is the impact it's had on them. These are these close friends
Hmm.
that have done this, that have
Yep.
been the misconduct. They have represented them in this
Hmm.
way, and the absolute emotion that erupted out of that, I think, it was actually quite beautiful how the club came together, and the men congratulated the women's team at the in between. It was actually quite a special football moment, I think.
Yep. 100%. And again, as I try to, I've tried to keep it about the football when it comes to the podcast, but I know this is something you just cannot not discuss. And I will repeat this when it comes to it is I'm very good friends with a few of the women. Brianna Tarrant, the defender for Sydney Swans. I remember messaged her during the week, and for many of the women, they wanted to play football. That's the only thing that they were focused on. They didn't want to give this, they didn't want to talk about it because it had nothing to do with them, but they were brought in because of what happened. But I agree with you that this was one of those that the women got so much extra support because of it. And I thought the atmosphere was incredible. Just how much support that they got. And I remember reaching out to her later, and I hope she's okay with this, but she said the atmosphere was incredible. She goes, every time something good happened for the Swans, they were up and about, they were clapping, they were cheering, everything like that. It was absolutely incredible. So I'm glad that the women got the support that they deserve. Um, just sucks how it had to come from a situation that was absolutely tragic. And again, I will leave that there. Again, 100% with you, Fee, that the emotion after the men was incredible to show that these it's not just impacting the people that the alleged victims or the perpetrators, it affected everybody in the football club. So
Mm.
I appreciate the emotion and absolutely love that on that. We'll step away from Sydney. Let's go up to Queensland because North Melbourne, the machine just continues to go. I mean, I know this is real quick question without notice. I mean, as a Hawk supporter, this is terrifying because yeah, are North even beatable?
Well, they didn't lose a game all of 2025 and then won the premiership. And they still have so many star players in their team. I think when Australia played Ireland in the inaugural
Cup
game,
game. Yeah.
the women's game, there was several Irish players represented from North Melbourne in that team. Excuse me, Donny.
Bless you.
Um, and Brisbane have been a huge success right from the beginning of the competition. So for North Melbourne to go up there and beat them, I don't know. It's kind of like, what do we do?
Hmm.
What a team's going to do to be able to beat North Melbourne? Who can do it this season?
Hmm.
I don't see a team that can. And but it gets a bit boring when that's the case too. Like it's
Exactly.
always
Yeah.
good. It's always good to balance out the competition when that happens. So
Yep.
yeah, it was a grand final rematch, but it was a big statement. Big statement.
Yep, yep. No, I got to give Coach Crocker. I mean, he has done so well with that North Melbourne team, but it's scary. I think Melbourne's got the firepower to do it. The question is, do they have the depth to be able to stay with
Mm.
North? Will be the biggest question on that. We will find out a little bit later on in the season. I do believe that they are fixtured with each other this year, but yeah, Melbourne's one of those teams I think has got the firepower. We'll have to see how that goes. So I will let you have your moment as the Hawks supporter that you are. How chuffed are you? Another win for the Hawks, getting a win over what has become a rivalry in AFLW between Hawthorn and Port Adelaide.
Yeah, look, it was a bit of a disappointing first quarter. I actually watched the whole game. It was 1 point apiece at the first change. So it, it was looking like a low scoring affair. And, one of the criticisms that some of the people that are against the women's footy often say is how low scoring it is. So I was a bit worried about where it was heading after that first quarter. But it evened up sort of in the half time. But look, we just kicked away in the second half. And one of our stars is Anya McDonough. She is, obviously an Irish player, but she is now the highest scoring Irish player ever in the whole of the AFLW. So for me, she's our star player for sure. Every time I've seen her go down with injury, I'm like, oh no, what's going to happen to our team? Because she is just on fire. So and the team just sort of, I don't know, they just managed to come together in that second half and dominate and just not let Port Adelaide get the ball at all. and to win over there as well in South Australia, that's a big deal. So we got the 4 points on the ladder, and of course we lost to Melbourne the week before, so we needed to bounce back from that to kind of keep our season alive. Because you got to remember the women's season's only 12 rounds, so it's if you come into the first 2 rounds not winning a game, it's a big way back
Mhm.
to to come into the game. So I was pretty pleased with my Hawks.
Yep. Oh, they were fantastic. Like I said, it's becoming a rivalry. It's going to be so much fun to watch because both teams have so much young talent that I think they are going to be two of the teams to watch over the next 5 to 7 years because they will just only get stronger as their youthful talent get better and grow stronger and mature into their body. So let's move on to the men. I will say this, the word for me was anticlimactic because really there was only a couple of games that I think turned out that really got a lot of intrigue. We'll go through the results real quickly. Gold Coast get a win in an unimpressive unmeaningful game at the end, 103-80 over St. Kilda. Brisbane get a win over Collingwood, 159-96. Carlton shock the top of the minor premiers, Fremantle Dockers, 119-82. Melbourne fall to the Western Bulldogs at the MCG, 108-87. Geelong smash the Richmond Tigers, 133-76. Adelaide goes hold my beer, we'll do it even better as they smash GWS 157-101. Port Adelaide hold on and survive a scare from the Essendon Bombers by 10 at 105-95. Sydney, despite having a few players out, they get a win over North Melbourne 123-70. And your Hawks in the wet fall a little bit short, but get a win 107-45 over the West Coast Eagles. So as I said, the shocker has to be Carlton knocking off the minor premiers, Fremantle Dockers. I hate to caveat it, but I will say this. Was this Dockers team playing full bore 100% all out footy? No, I don't think they were. I think they put the
Mm.
cue in the rack. They knew they were going to be minor premiers. They know they're going to host a qualifying final in a couple of weeks. But Carlton came with piss and vinegar. They came after it and they come into the finals absolutely in fuego right now. Carlton is a scary team coming into the finals, despite being a wild card representative.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I still, being a bit of a traditionalist, find it hard to believe that in an 18 club competition that number 10 can actually play
Still play
finals. But
finals. Yep.
I still can't reconcile that, I have to admit. But the Dockers have lost to Melbourne a couple of weeks ago as well. So
Yep.
that maybe they did that because it was a 3 week. 3 weeks ago, it was impossible for them not to be minor premiers. It was
Yep.
in the bag.
Hmm.
Maybe they did take their foot off the pedal as a result. I never think that's a great psychological strategy,
Nope.
unless they just thought, we'll rest some players. I don't know whether they're doing that or not. But it doesn't. They don't look like they're in form. But maybe they are just resting while they're getting ready for finals. But the other thing about Fremantle is they haven't played finals for a long time. So, I hope I would want them to be going in with hitting the ground running, not kind of dragging their feet into finals and not playing as well.
Well, they've made finals. They've just flamed out the last couple of times. The
Mm,
last year lost to the Gold Coast and Gold Coast first ever experience in probably one of the games of the year, despite it being in the finals. And then the previous year after that, they survive the Western Bulldogs in an epic comeback and then fall apart in the next week. So right
mm,
now their finals play has not been fantastic. Now they want for nothing. I think they're the best team. They're the best team in the competition, list wise and play wise, when it comes to the entire home and away season. But coming into finals with a few question marks and some iffy play, it's not a great combination, especially knowing that you don't play this week. You play against a top four opportunity to get yourself automatically to a prelim, which eventually may lead you to another bye week. There's a few things that should concern Fremantle Dockers fans because this could go haywire
mm,
quickly if things do not go ideally. I know you're out in Optus Stadium, you're going to be at home no matter what when it comes to being in the finals. But the trend line does not look good. And that's what
Yeah.
I'd be a little bit concerned about is that yes, you had an incredible home and away season. You've earned the number one seed. You're the minor premiers, but you're not going in with a lot of confidence and you're not going in with great form. You're going in a little iffy and some question marks because of you resting during play. Some of your best players are not exactly playing great footy right now. So I'm
Mm.
interested. Do they pull their heads in during this bye week and come out absolutely spitting fire come that qualifying final in game one? Or do we see this lull that's continued to go? It's gonna be a storyline going into that quality final in a week is how do they come out? Because if they come
Yeah,
out spitting fire,
I actually wonder whether the bye round suits teams that well because they lose momentum, when they're
oh,
not
oh,
playing, and
100%.
I wonder whether they're having 2 weeks leading up to the
Hmm.
premiership, the
Yep.
grand final. If you're having those 2 weeks rested,
Yep.
you do lose some momentum. And let's look at what happened to Adelaide last year. They were minor premiers as well,
Hmm.
and come finals they went out in straight sets. So
Yep.
it's not, it's just a different, literally a different ball game
Yep. Yep.
when it comes to finals. So it how you play in the home away season, the energy you need to play is different than the way you need
Yep.
to come into finals. So
Hmm.
we'll see how they fare up. I'm a Hawk supporter. We're playing Fremantle in 2 weeks, so I hope they don't flare up as at all. Uh,
I knew that was coming.
I
I
hope
knew that was
they
coming.
fall on their ass. So
Well, here's
um,
I don't mean to caveat it, but another thing too that I will point out, and it's a little bit different, is that with Adelaide, you also had the Isaac Rankin situation, which I
very
think I
very
think
true.
the entire club muffed that so badly because they just did not handle it very well. I think their focus, the club's focus, even the players' focus, was on trying to make sure Isaac could play by trying to get the
Mm,
suspension thing. So I don't know if I would compare it the same way. Like I said, we've
true.
had we've had ones and we've had top teams, even three or four that have straight said it that we were not expecting. So I fully get that. Um, I also look at it too is that our 7 through 10 actually have an advantage now because they're going to have continuous play for all 5 weeks of the finals compared to a 1 through 4 seed who potentially could play 3 games over the span of a month and a half. So it's going to be interesting to see. Just it's the rest versus rust argument, which is actually going to be more beneficial. But we'll see. This is the first year we have wild cards, so
Mm,
I'm gonna take the results a little bit with a grain of salt because we don't know if that's going to be the way it always will be, or if this is just the way situations go because each year is different, each team is different. So I don't want to put all the eggs into one basket on that. So let's hop over to the other result that I think again, as you did at the top of the show said, this shocked us a little bit as Melbourne lose at the MCG. My 21 108-87. The Western
mm.
Bulldogs get a win, get some momentum going into the finals, and now demotes Melbourne down to where they play Carlton in the first game of the wild card finals.
Yeah, it's to be honest with you, I just thought Melbourne had it in the bag. They were, even contending for fourth position at one point there in the top four. To lose to the Bulldogs and then drop down into wild card, it was quite stunning, really, quite a
Mhm.
dramatic, bottom out from Melbourne. And look, now they're playing the wild card. I think, yeah, their seventh position in seasons past, they would have automatically gone through to the finals. They're going to be playing Carlton, and I think they could lose that. So they really, really did, stuff up by losing to the Bulldogs, and I think they know that
Yep. So
as
the
well.
only the only thing that I could and it's a weird stretch to try to make this a positive, but it gets another game under Stephen King into this young group. And you can kind of build some momentum going into the regular part of the finals, because you get a win over quite frankly, the best performing team, the best formed team of the entire competition is sitting here right now on your doorstep, and you have a chance to knock them out, get a ton of confidence into your young boys, and then go into a final series where you're playing a team that was sitting and resting for a week. So maybe you have that opportunity to get a ton of momentum. You get a win over Carlton, and then you jump the team that you play in the first round of the finals in that elimination final and maybe catch them by surprise and get lucky and knock them off and then go into a match against a team that's coming off a loss. So I know it's a weird twist of I can find a positive out of this, but maybe this might not be a bad thing for this young Melbourne side. Another game under Steven, another game under Coach King, another game to get some confidence underneath him, another game to get um, some continuity amongst this entire group because this is still a young core. They've got intermixings of some great pieces. Again, Max Gone has aged like a fine wine. He has been absolutely chef's kiss. Will not be surprised if he makes another All Australian, getting him a ninth All Australian blazer. Um, I'm weird. I find this almost as not a bad thing for this young Melbourne side, but it is terrifying that you're playing a Carlton team that literally they can go full bore because if they lose, that's okay. They finish 10th. But if they win, OMG, the Carlton train gets going. And we saw it a few years ago when they got all the way to a preliminary final that the old Carlton supporters come out of the woodwork as the team gets further, if the team starts winning and advances further into finals. So that's going to be an intriguing. I think that could be the better of the two matchups. Collingwood Western Bulldogs annoys me a little bit because both teams have some deficiencies that I think they're going to be sitting
Mm,
ducks come the next round of the finals. Both teams have deficiencies on the back end that I think are going to get exposed by whoever they play in that elimination final. So I'm thinking the team that could throw some huge spanners in the works is going to be whoever wins that Melbourne Carlton because they're going to be cherry ripe, they're going to be looking good, and they're going to step up against either Geelong or Adelaide, who have been sitting for a week, and you're going to be ready to go. So it's going to be
yeah.
fascinating on this. Again, as the Hawks supporter that you are, I'll let you have it. Nick Watson, holy crap, gets a potential mark of the year contender in the wet. How awesome was that? Um, I kind of feel sorry. I kind of feel bad for Hawthorn because if this game would have stayed dry, they had a chance
You know,
to run up the score and to get that third place back. But unfortunately, Mother Nature decided thou shalt rain on it, and it
yes.
kind of took the air out of the game for Hawthorn.
Yeah, I agree. I kind of wish we had a dry game because I think we would have just had a smoother run at things. But look, we finished top four. I think we've got to be happy with that. And so we get the double chance. I, I I don't know whether it would be better playing Fremantle in WA or Sydney in the SEG. Who knows? Even with the five players out, Sydney seemed to have a way of pulling through. But it's yeah, it's exciting. I think that we managed to do that. Jack Gunston, of course, it was his 300th game, and so many of the Hawks legends were at the ground cheering him on. Luke Bruce and James Sicily carried him off from the ground at the end, and he kicked 5 goals in the game as well. So such a magical story he is. He's played his 17th season, and he's signed on for next year as well. So this has been, I think, one of his best seasons. He kicked his 600th goal. He's high up on the Coleman ladder. A real mentor for some of the younger kids, and just a reliable force down forward. So it was really enjoyable to watch him play during the whole thing. So we didn't get the percentage we needed, but there's not many games you can play where you can get over a 90-point margin in a game. But as you say, I think we might have at least sniffed at it if it had been drier.
Yep, 100%. And another one that's aged like fine wine, Mr. Jack Gunston. He's been playing some incredible footy over the last couple of years. I know I really quick want to question without notice because as we said, there was a lot of emotion up at the SCG, but I kind of want to go to you because and let's stay in the football area here.
Mm.
as you kind of said, there were some walkouts when it came to the SCG after the W game. There were some people that were filmed coming off. Was it as aggressive or as numerous as some people say it is? I don't know. I mean, we don't have a view on every single exit of the SCG to know how many actually left after the W game. So I'm going to ask this. I have said I have no problem with people walking out because everybody can fan the way they do. So for you in this situation, your thoughts on some of the fans walking out, number one, and then number two, um, just is it something where I know we have a fan culture of questioning their fandom? Um, am I wrong for not quite? I don't question people's fandom because I believe everybody can fan the way they want. So sorry, I made this so much longer than it should have been. Your thoughts on kind of are you okay with people walking out in that situation, or is it something that not something that you would do despite the situation? Sorry.
Yeah, yeah, it's good thought. What would I do in that situation? I would find it hard to know that culturally this happened at my club and that the men at the club had, there'd been men that I'd been watching all year, that our kids had been idolising. I think for some people it was parents that didn't want their kids to be watching the men's game after everything that had happened. I think it's beyond a football issue. It's not just, oh, our team's playing badly, therefore I'm not going to watch. This is, particularly, we don't know what people's stories are. Are there women that left because they've experienced sexual assault themselves?
Mm-hmm.
Are there people that are connected to that story in a very personal kind of way? We don't know why each person did that. So I think we just have to respect that the story that came out really hurt a lot of people, and hurt fans, hurt women, hurt, a lot of people that were connected to the club. So I think, if that's what people chose to do, that we have to respect that.
Yep.
That's the way they chose to handle it.
Yep.
And good on them for coming and supporting the women as well and just showing that, we're behind you in your workplace as well. So
Yep.
as we were talking about. But in terms of the game itself, I actually watched the whole game. I had surgery last week, so I've been couch ridden. So I
Oh
just
boy.
watched 7 games of football this weekend, so I'm well
Man, that
qualified
sounds
to
like a
report
pretty
on it
good
all.
idea for me.
Yeah. So I have to say, North Melbourne played terribly, like
Yes,
really,
100%. Yep.
really badly. So the North Melbourne have had some great games this season, and I think their position on the ladder doesn't reflect how much they've improved.
Hmm.
But it's that they played badly. The Swans didn't convince me either, in terms of actual football. I thought it was a pretty lacklustre game. The Swans just happened to not stuff up as much as North Melbourne. Like it just didn't feel like
Yep.
two high quality teams playing each other, or even one team that was exceptional. It wasn't a great game of football,
Hmm.
and you could feel the flatness in the team, both teams for probably different reasons. But North Melbourne, that was a dead rubber game for them. But you could feel the flatness in the Swans players playing the actual game. And look, it's not every week that 5 players get taken out of your team suddenly, and you've got to make a whole new game plan without those players in it. So credit to the Swans for winning despite all of that. But yeah, low quality game of football, I would say, is my
Yep.
opinion.
Oh, I would not argue on that. Too many, there's so many skill errors on both ends. I was disappointed in North. I thought this was a perfect opportunity to show that your team is improving. You capitalize on an opponent that is weakened. This was a perfect opportunity to go on the road, get a big win, get yourself some confidence going into next season, and you absolutely laid an egg. Um,
Yeah.
absolutely laid an egg, and I think that's in some situations, like I said, as a Swan supporter, I don't mind because it gets some confidence into some play. It gets some confidence into see young players going into the finals. For me, I don't mind it, but I was disappointed in North. I truly thought North. This was the perfect opportunity to capitalize on a giant and absolutely put them to the sword. and they did no such thing. In fact, they pretty much turned the sword and stabbed themselves.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the sad part
I
about that
wondered
one.
whether some of the players, why weren't they playing for their spot on the team next year?
Hmm. Yep.
You know, in a game like that, try and play your best
Yep.
because we're also looking forward to next year as well. So,
Hmm.
yeah, there seems to be some low morale in that team at the moment for some
Yeah,
reason.
unfortunately, we'll have to see. So that will we will tie up round that round with a little bow again. Yeah, I absolutely love that. So let's hop into it. I have burning questions. I have one for each competition, really quickly before we move on. Let's start with the women because I mean, I think everybody kind of knew at the start of the year North Melbourne was going to be the cream of the crop. We knew that it was where everybody was going to land from there. The ladder has a few surprising results. We have a few teams that are in places I was not expecting at least. So for you, Fee, what team has surprised you the most so far with their play, both either good or bad
For women or men?
for the women?
For the women, yeah. Look, one of the things that I think, well, Adelaide have surprised me a little bit that they're not playing well at all. But they've been a top team for 10 years. They've always it's always Adelaide and Brisbane for so many years. They've really fallen off now, I think. And Chelsea Randall, with her sudden retirement at the start of the season because of head injuries, that's that them being that far down the ladder with no wins on the board after 2 rounds, I think we're going to see where they're going to go. On the plus side, I think Western Bulldogs in the women's,
Hmm.
so great to see them with 2 wins so early on in the season. They've had some lackluster seasons over the last couple of years, and seeing them back in the top four and playing so well, I think is a great sign. So yeah,
Yeah, no, I'm 100% with you. The Crows, it's now I will caveat too. The Crows played Sydney, who I thought would see a bump this year, potentially be finals. Carlton, same thing. They were preliminary finalists last year. A couple of difficult games for them to start the season, but again, I also thought Adelaide would beat Sydney in the first game of the season. So they're in a little bit of a spot. I wasn't expecting them to be. Gold Coast getting a win. I was happy for them. That the shocker, and then West Coast being down where they I went. Well, both West Coast and Adelaide being 0-2 is it's a little bit of a
yes,
little thrown me off a little bit because I was expecting Daisy Pierce and the Eagles
mm,
to again have
agreed.
another year where they increased, where they got a little bit better. I mean, Ella Roberts is absolutely incredible. Love her to death. Lucia Painter, the young stars that they have at the West Coast Eagles. I was hoping to see a bounce back. They've been a little disappointing this year. Gold Coast, I was expecting to be a developmental team, a team that I thought was going to get smashed a little bit more than years before because they went so young with all of their academy players. So for Gold Coast to go out west and to kind of hand West Coast their tushy on a silver platter was not something I was expecting. So those are for me the two disappointing teams. I agree with you. I think the Western Bulldogs have been really good in the start of the season. There's a little bit of red hat Donnie in me that happy that the Swans are 2-0. I thought they've played some really good footy in their first two games under Colin O'Riordan, the first ever Irish coach, which I thought
Yes,
it has been such a cool story that um he's really brought a little bit of that Irish flair to the Sydney Swans a little bit, and the fact that they get stronger as the game goes on. Their fourth quarters have been really good. That's where they got Adelaide, and they really put the sword to Essendon in that fourth term. So it'll be fun to see, can the Swans keep it up as being a team that gets stronger as the game goes on. So it'll be fascinating. No, so and then we'll move over to the men's question because as a purist that you are, I'm fascinated to hear your answer on this. Is did the wild card rounds addition make round 24 meaningless?
yeah. Look, it definitely did, but yeah, I'm still not sold on the wild card.
Hmm.
I just kind of think like let's look at Melbourne and Carlton playing. So Melbourne finished seventh. Normally they would just automatically be playing finals,
Yep.
and then Western Bulldogs have finished eight. Normally they would be playing finals. But what if Collingwood and Carlton win from ninth and 10th position?
Hmm.
I can't quite reconcile that they can.
Hmm.
Even though, I mean, Carlton, the way they're performing right now, yes, you could say, and look, Collingwood's a good team as well. Yes, at the moment, they're performing well at the moment, but still, they finished ninth and 10th. They shouldn't be sniffing anywhere near finals. We're only an 18-team competition for
Yep.
now until Tasmania come on board. But, it just feels like, gosh, you have to be really bad not to make the wild card or finals at all. But
Well,
yeah, look, it gave a lot more. I think a lot more games were interesting that
mhm,
wouldn't have been interesting. Melbourne and the Western Bulldogs are one of them. But the wild card was fixed, I think, 2 rounds ago
mhm,
because Carlton were a game and a half ahead of St Kilda at
mhm.
number 11. So yeah, it's definitely told a different story. Maybe I'll come around, but at the moment I'm not such a big fan.
I no, I 100% agree. I stated it a couple of times. I think they brought the wild card in just a little early. I think they should have waited until Tassie and then whoever the 20th team comes in and
Yeah,
then move to
make
this
a bit
wild
more
card
sense.
system because then it would be 50% of the ladder would make finals. So I'm fully with you on that. For me, I 100% agree. It was meaningless because there was no intrigue. I mean, let's rewind a full year and look at round 24 last year. Man, every single we were watching all the way to Sunday afternoon because we knew that the last game of the last round was going to depict where and who made
Mm,
finals. Where this year, because of the wild card schedule, the Sunday game, and again, I know it's your Hawks, I love it to death, but it did not affect the ladder like last year's did, where it was two teams fighting for that final spot in the ladder. So
mm,
kind of came meaningless, and this is another one of those where I'm not trying to make it, but it is. It's a shot at AFL House because there's your gift, AFL House. You wanted because of the TV producers, you wanted the wild cards. You added a couple extra couple of games to make a little bit more money. You've made this meaningless because you had not the wild card. So this is kind of one of those where I sit here and I go, there's your present. Your present is round 24 being, mm-mm, I mean, womp womp,
yeah,
literally. So,
yeah.
oh,
I mean, it does. It really does look at the moment that the AFL cares more about broadcasting dollars than getting bums on seats at stadiums, even. So
100%. Yep. 100%. And it's kind of sad, really, but come see, come saw. It's what we do. We'll make the best of it. We'll do what we can. But again, I'm one of those. And until the 20th team came in, I would have been perfectly fine with this not happening. But we get it. We're going to have to deal with it. It's our reality. The one thing I will give, though, that we should be happy about is that at least all 10 teams had winning records instead of getting to a situation where maybe 10th place is that an even 500 record or below 500 record. Then we go, what are we doing? So
mm,
I don't know. So we at least have that nice thing that all the teams have winning records
yeah.
come the wild card round. So alrighty. So normally we will move on to the fun part. This is where I show how insane I am, is that I do my team of the week. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, I did do a team of the week for both the men and the women. I give myself homework. Why am I doing this? Oh, yeah, it's because I love this sport that is Aussie rules football. So, Fee, indulge me for just a second here. We're going to start off with the women. Again, I am a gentleman. We give the ladies the first shot on this. So I will throw this up. I will do this really, really quickly. I just gotta adjust one thing. So we start off on the full back line for the team of the week. We start off with Brisbane's Jen Dunn. We have North Melbourne's Jasmine Ferguson rounding out the fullback line. Along the halfback line, we have Rachel Kearns of the Geelong Cats, Emma O'Driscoll of the Fremantle Dockers, and Erica O'Shea of the North Melbourne Kangaroos. On the wings, yes, ladies and gentlemen, I do wings because wings are an actual position. Let's give them a little bit of love. Maddie Newman of the Adelaide Crows and Dana Finn of the Carlton Blues. In the center, we have Ruck Mimstrom. We have Isabel Pritchard of the Western Bulldogs, North Melbourne's Jasmine Garner, and Hawthorn's Laura Stone. On the half forward line, we have Alana Welsh of the Gold Coast Suns, Poppy Stockwell of the Hawthorn Hawks, and Emma McDonald of the Western Western Bulldogs. My full forward line, she kicks six goals, have to have her in. Miss Jackie Perry of the Geelong Football Club, and Nell Morris Dalton, the last day signing for the Carlton Blues, round out my team of the week. When it comes to the starters on the bench, we have a defender, a midfielder, a ruck, a forward, and then a utility player from any position. My defender is Jordan Allen of the Melbourne Demons. My midfielder is Laura Gardner of the Sydney Swans. My ruck is Darcy Davis of the Gold Coast Suns. My forward is Riley Witherspoon of the Melbourne Demons, and my utility is Michaela Bowen of the Geelong Cats. Before we go to the men, quick thoughts of team of the week for the women's.
I love that you've included some of the Starhawk supporters there, Donny.
Yep. Yeah. Poppy Stockwell's been fantastic. I've
Yeah,
loved
she
her.
has.
These first two games, she's been a great addition because I know Eileen Gilroy hung up the boots. She retired, and I was a little worried would they have another person to go to along the forward line. And Poppy Stockwell has raised her hand. She has taken that seat and she has ran with it. It has been fantastic. And Laura Stone has been a great addition. I know you didn't have Jazz Fleming in that game, so she stepped up, did really well again. 2 goals from the central midfield.
Mm.
That is a great
Yeah, Lois
addition.
Stone played really well.
Oh yeah.
She was
Yeah. It was
good.
it was absolutely fantastic. And then seeing, I got to give a fun shout out to Nell Morris Dalton. I mean, last day signing for Carlton on an injury replacement situation, and she has done the same thing. She has stepped up for the Carlton Blues. Fantastic to see her back in the AFLW for sure. Now let's hop over to the men's real quickly. We'll start off on the halfback line. We have Oscar McDonald of the Fremantle Dockers, James Sicily of the Hawthorn Hawks, and Bodie Hewlin of the Gold Coast Suns. Along the halfback line, we have Dan Houston of the Collingwood Magpies, Cam Zurha of the North Melbourne Kangaroos, and young boy Harry Kyle of the Sydney Swans. On the wings, we have Jace Burgoyne of the Port Adelaide Power. I can't remember Heinz's first name for the Western Bulldogs. I don't know why. I totally whiffed on that. My apologies. Into the center, we have Ruck, North Melbourne's Tristan Sheary. And then in the center guts, we have Isaac Rankin of the Adelaide Crows, Bailey Smith of the Geelong Cats, and Marcus Bontempelli of the Western Bulldogs. Along the half forward line, we have Nate Caddy of the Essendon Bombers, Mitch Georgiades of the Port Adelaide Power, and Francis Evans of the Carlton Blues. Along the forward line, holy crap, 8 goals for Mr. Logan Morris of the Brisbane Lions. Tex Walker goes out with a bang, 6 goals for the Adelaide Crows, and Jake Stringer says goodbye to the GWS Giants, kicking 6 for the Giants. On the bench, we have Hugo Hall-Kahan of the Adelaide Crows. Matt Kennedy is our center midfielder. Our ruck is Luke Jackson of the Fremantle Dockers. Our forward, the ever-aging Jack Gunston of the Hawthorn Hawks. And my utility, also from Hawthorn, Will Day.
Ah, some great players in there. Logan from Brisbane Lions. I mean, that's scary when a team like the Brisbane Lions have players like that coming up because they're an aging team, but they've got the youth coming right up
Mhm.
underneath. Tex
Yep.
Walker, yeah, he announced his retirement. It's that time of year where we have to hug our loved ones because some of the star players from our team start leaving.
Right.
But yeah, I loved it. Adelaide lit up whole
Yep.
skyscrapers with the number 13 saying thank you, Tex. The ground was all thank you, Tex. You know, it was such a good send off for him and kicking 6 goals. What a night he had.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm fascinated to watch that Crows team when it comes to the finals because can they make up for last year's stuff up going out in straight sets? But I've always enjoyed Tex. I know he's had some controversies himself, but he's been an incredible player for the LA Crows. It'll be fascinating to see how the Crows go come finals. So we get to it. I know we're still early. Let's tip. We're going to start with the women, and then if you'll indulge me, Fee, I want to tip all of the finals. I want to see who your premier is, and I'll let you know who my premier is when it comes to tipping the finals. So let's start off in the women's round 3. We have Indigenous round, so I'm going to butcher some names, but I'm going to make an attempt to try to be as respectful as I can. So let's start off as the North Melbourne Kangaroos take on the Western Bulldogs at UTAS Stadium down in Launceston in Tasmania. North, Western Bulldogs, who do you like?
Yeah, and you've got to tip North, don't you?
Yep, unfortunately. We'll go with North. Again, I want the Western Bulldogs to be competitive in this game. I really hope they do. But North, again, they're just so good. So let's move on. Again, I'm going to butcher this, but I'm going to make an attempt. Adelaide or Kurwana will take on Wyatt Marwa, the West Coast Eagles at Thomas Farms Oval over in Adelaide. Crows, Eagles, who do you like?
Look, I'm going to tip the Crows because it is, you know, it being played in Adelaide. And of course, the Eagles haven't been playing well, so we would have to tip the Crows. But if the Eagles lost the third game in a row, you'd have to
Mhm.
write their season off almost. It'd be impossible to come back from that, I think.
Yeah, the 12-game season, really, if you get into a hole early in the year, I believe Adelaide has had tougher opponents. I believe Adelaide has played better in the games, even despite the losses. I'm with you. Tip Crows on this one. Tough way to start Daisy Pierce's next season with an 0-3 start, but unfortunately, I
Yeah,
think this Crows team at home, they're going to be just a little. They were strong against Sydney. Sydney had a great fourth quarter, and the Eagles have struggled a little bit. Let's head up. I love this. Coffs Harbour International Stadium as the Swans take their talents up north to Coffs Harbour as they take on Yura Yorka or St. Kilda in this one. I'm not just Red Hat Donnie here. I like the way the Swans are playing. St. Kilda coming off a smashing. Do they bounce back? How do they handle Tiana Smith? I like the Swans in this one, but I think this is a cracking game up at Coffs Harbour.
yeah. Well, my favourite Swans player is Zippy Fish, but
Mhm.
yeah. You look, I'm going to tip the Swans quite easily for that one. But I do love that it's being played up in Coffs Harbour. That's the northern part of New South Wales.
Yeah,
And, you know, that's a good thing about the women's round as well. We get to watch footy in different places that aren't just,
yeah.
you know, the capital cities.
Yep, definitely. Speaking of capital cities, let's head up to Canberra as GWS take on Yarrapulti or Port Adelaide over and the nation's capital Giants. Power. Who do you like?
Yeah, I'm going to tip Port Adelaide. I think even though it's a Giants home game, I think Port Adelaide are playing pretty well.
Mhm.
And yeah, I'm going to tip them.
For me, Matilda Schultz, I think, is the ultimate game breaker for this one because of her ability as a ruck and a fifth midfielder when it comes to it. I am with you. I'm going to tip the power on this one. Nam versus Brisbane at Casey Fields, the lovely bit that is Casey Fields out in its utter existence. Melbourne, Brisbane, who do you like?
This is a tough one. I think both of these teams are in top form. And look, Brisbane can beat, you know, Narm down and Melbourne down in Casey Fields, but
Mhm.
I'm going to tip Melbourne just because of the home advantage. But I think you could split that game down the middle.
Yeah,
It'd be a
Brisbane's
hard one
one.
to pick.
Yeah, Brisbane's one of those teams that somehow has found some success down at Casey Fields. For some weird reason, they've played it really well. I just like the way Nam's playing. Kate Horrigan is one of the best in the competition. It's hard to argue that. I think they've really, really gelled really well to start the season, even under their new coach. So I'm with you. Give me Nam on this one. Let's head up to People's First Stadium up in Queensland as the Gold Coast host the Cats. Both teams coming off a win on this one. Who do you like in this one?
I'm going to tip the Cats on this one. Yeah, I think the Cats are playing so well this season, and were playing well at the end of last season as well. Yeah, I'm going to tip the Cats.
Yep, I'm with you on that one. Tipping the Cats, I think the experience of the Cats will be just a little bit too much for the young super talents that are up in the Gold Coast. Fun one for you, Victoria Park, as the Collingwood Magpies take on your beloved Hawks. Hawks, Pies, who do you like?
Look, I'm actually going to go to this game, Johnny.
I
So
was
it's
I
just
was
down
gonna
the
I was
road.
gonna say I bet you you're gonna find yourself at Victoria Park for sure.
Well, Victoria Park is almost walking distance from my house, so I
Awesome.
and we're taking our kids down to the game. One of the great things about the women's game, it's so great to take kids to. There's
Yep.
lots of
Yep.
you know festivals. You can kick the footy on the field before and after the game, so it's always a special thing. And look, some of these grounds are the grounds I used to go to as a kid myself. So
Mhm.
but I'm going to tip our Hawks. I think we're playing exceptionally well. I was very impressed with us last week. So
Yep.
whereas Collingwood not playing so well,
Yep. I'd be
but
fa- I'd
we
be
won a game.
Yeah, I'd be fascinated to see does Jazz is Jazz Fleming back, or is she still going to be out on this one? Even despite the no Jazz Fleming, I still think Carlton is playing. I mean, Collingwood, blah, 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 Hawthorne, get your right names, coach. Hawthorne is just playing so much better footy, and there is a little bit of controversy in the Collingwood ranks. I know there's stories coming out of some unrest amongst the playing group, the fact that there's players that aren't signed for next year, and is Collingwood really putting their max effort into the women's program? I know that I'm not sure how much salt is in that story, but
Mm.
that's a little frustrating that you're hearing some unrest in the Collingwood dressing room for sure. A 10 out to Coburn Oval out in Perth as Wallulup take on Carlton. Fremantle versus Carlton. I'm going to tip Carlton on this one, but I will say this: long travel coming off of it, this could be interesting to see. Can Wallulup throw a little bit of a spanner in the works? I'm going to tip Carlton, but thinking Fremantle's going to be up and about in this one. Love watching Turbo play.
Yeah, I think this could be a bit more even than we think, but I would tip Carlton just because I think they're in top form at the moment.
Yep, yep,
But also Fremantle have home ground advantage. So and they have won one game this season as well. So
mhm.
yeah, I'm going to tip Carlton.
Yep, with you on that one. I was proud of myself that I knew the difference it's Coburn out in Perth.
Yeah,
So,
well, that's the funny thing is that some of these grounds are grounds that the men don't play at. They're not big enough, but
yeah.
uh, we get the local footy.
Well, I will say this is that I'm not sure how much Triple M has the rush hour during the thing, and one of the running jokes is Billy Brownless calling that particular suburb a different name than what it actually is supposed to be called. So it's a running joke that I gotta get a giggle out of a little bit, but so I wasn't gonna go there. So all right, and then the Dreamtime women's version up in Darwin as the Essendon Bombers take on the Richmond Tigers. Fascinating one here. Tigers not playing too bad. Essendon struggling a little bit. Give me the Tigers in this one. I think the Tigers playing a little bit better footy right now, but I think this is going to be a cracking one up in Darwin.
Yeah, look, it's always a special game when the Indigenous rounds played up in Darwin because the whole Indigenous community gets behind it. In fact,
Mhm.
one of the ambitions I have is to go to the Tiwi Islands for their grand final because that's pure, just a beautiful Indigenous
Yep.
grand final,
Mhm.
and of course our Indigenous players and community really helped invent our game.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, they used
Oh,
to play a game called Marngrook, so
yep.
right near where the MCG is today. So it is a special time, and I think actually in mainstream Australia, it's our sporting grounds that we actually mainstream Australia actually comes together to celebrate Indigenous culture. I can't think of any other event that allows us to do that. So having said that, I think I'm going to tip the Bombers on this one.
Okay.
Controversial. I know they haven't won a game yet, but
They've been
I'm going to tip the
competitive. They've
Bombers.
been competitive in both. So I don't think it's as
Yeah.
big a stretch. And I know I'm not a big better, but even the right now they're actually the favorite in the betting market. So it's very interesting. I think the Tigers have played. I think the Tigers have played really well. There's been a little bit of inconsistent play for Essendon to start the season again. I think they've played better than their 0-2 record. I think they've been competitive in both their games, but I like the way the Tigers are playing. They've got to win. They've played a little bit. They've played some really good footy. They played a tough Western Bulldogs team, so it'll be interesting to see how they bounce back up in Darwin. That'll be fun. So let's move over to the men. Let's have some fun. Let's put it down on record to see can we tip or can we not tip. So let's start off with the wild card games again. Let's get the ugliness out of the way, the part that you don't want, your fate. We'll start off MCG Western Bulldogs, Collingwood Magpies. Again, I find it fascinating that the home team is actually not the team's place that they're supposed to play, but that's the AFL for you. We got to make more money. Collingwood Western Bulldogs. Who do you like?
Look, I'm gonna tip Collingwood. I think they're generally in better form than the Western Bulldogs. The Western Bulldogs have been very inconsistent this season. They were sitting at the top of the ladder for the first few rounds of the season this year, but fell into injury. They did just beat Melbourne, so I think it's going to be a very close game, to be honest. But I'm going to tip the Pies.
Okay. I am with you. I'm going to tip the pies in this one. The defensive inabilities of the Western Bulldogs sometimes concern me a little bit. I'm fascinated to see which superstar has a bigger impact. Is it Marcus Bontempelli or is it Nick Dacos? I think that's going to be a
Mm,
biggest one on there.
good
I think
question.
Nick Dacos has just been a little bit more consistent. He's tougher to tag. He's got, I think, a little bit more of a deeper supporting cast. Jordan Ngoe, Dan Houston, Josh Dacos, um, Jack Crisp. I, I just think there's more depth when it comes to it. I think there's more structure defensively for the Collingwood. So I like the pies in this one. I am with you. And then the fun one, Melbourne versus Carlton, also MCG. The Red Hot Blues take on the Melbourne Demons, who are a little shocked to be here. Will we see a little bit of an underperformance from Melbourne, or will the D's come to play come finals time? D's, Blues, who you like?
If I was a D supporter, I'd be shaking in my boots. I mean, Carlton just have come off a win with the top team and have had 11 out of what 13, 14
Mhm.
wins since Josh Fraser took over. They've got high morale because they have selected their coach and Josh Fraser has taken the helm. Whereas the Demons, they're coming off a loss. Sometimes that motivates a team, but
Mhm.
I would be worried if I was a D's fan. I'm going to tip Carlton.
I am tipping Carlton only because if you look at the lists, there's so much more experience on the Carlton side when it comes to winning finals, when it comes to finals experience. Unfortunately, with the revamp of the roster, you've got a lot of young boys who have never played finals before. Yes, you've got Max Con. Yes, you've got Jake Lever. You've got some experience there. But the total number of experienced finals players on the Carlton side, I think, gives them a little bit of an advantage. They've got all the momentum. They're playing really good footy. They're absolutely spitting fire right now, coming off a win over Fremantle. Again, how much stock you put into that depends on who you are. I'm with you. I like Carlton. Now, the way the rules are is that because Carlton is the lowest seeded team that has moved on, they will slot into the eighth spot and take on Geelong. Adelaide will then play Collingwood over at the Adelaide Oval. So that is the way we both tipped. So that is the way it has moved on. So let's go on. Let's tip the finals as they normally would go. Fremantle versus Hawthorn, Optus Stadium. I know as a Hawks fan, can you see your Hawks pulling an upset and knocking off the Dockers in Optus Stadium? Or, unfortunately, will the Dockers come victorious at home?
Yeah, I can see the Hawks winning that game.
I can too.
I think we've beaten Fremantle over there before. It has been done. We're in good form from our last game. We've got high momentum from that. Yeah, I think it'll be close. I'm finding it very hard to tip genuinely,
Mhm.
but I'm going to tip my Hawks just because I'm slightly biased.
I love it. No, I completely understand. I'm gonna go Fremantle only because they tend to play really well at home. Hawthorne's got to fly back home for another week and then fly back out again.
Yeah, bit of trouble
Fremantle does not lose at home. Most of their losses have come in
at the
interstate.
MCG.
So, or the MC or Canberra. They also lost that game at GWS. So, um,
Mm.
at home, I'm gonna give them the chocolates only because they haven't lost at home. They've got Wharfy time for some odd reason has started to put fear into some people. So that's I think I'm gonna go Fremantle in this one. But I agree with you. I think it's still really close. I think Hawthorn can get some focus in that. I think it'll be a cracking game. Let's head to the other qualifying final where Brisbane head down to Sydney at the SCG. Swans, Lions. Who do you like?
I'm going to tip the Lions. I think there was a bit of a battle for third place because I mean Sydney have had five of their key players gutted from the team. They didn't play well against North Melbourne, even though they won. I think Brisbane are unfortunately one of those teams that sneak in at the end of the season as well. They've got so many champion players that have played finals, and youth coming through like Logan and Lockie Neal's on fire at the moment. I've got to tip Brisbane. Sorry,
No,
Donny.
no, no, don't apologize because I was going to say the same thing. And unfortunately, It's the midfield matchup is not good in any way. I can slice it 8 million ways. I can try to find any bias way I can to give Sydney no. Ashcroft, Neal, Dunkley, McCluggage most likely back. Lohman, I mean, for the forward line, Lohman, Morris, Cameron, Reyna, Bailey. I mean, I have trouble seeing how Sydney's going to be able to shut down every single weapon that Brisbane has. It is at the
Yeah,
SCG. They did beat them earlier this year. The one thing I will give Sydney that I think a lot of people don't understand is that sometimes when you're put against a wall, you can have some of your best performances in the world because everybody's going to tell Sydney, you're not going to win, you're not going to win, you're not going to win, you're not going to win. This is where you could see an inspired performance. Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to be enough, but I'm fascinated. This game has intrigued me because there's a lot of more emotion, there's a lot more confidence in this one side. I'm with you. Brisbane win this one. Unfortunately, Sydney fall, but I can't ignore reality. Brisbane is a two-time defending premiers. They're playing really good footy, and they have a deep team that you just can't shut everything down that you're going to need to. Let's play at the MCG again. Fascinating that Geelong again cannot get a home game, as Geelong will take on Carlton in the first round of the elimination finals. Geelong Carlton. Who do you like?
I think this is where if Carlton and Geelong play, I think it's where Carlton's run finishes. To be honest, I think Geelong so much finals experience. Still you've got players like Patrick Dangerfield still playing. I just think, yeah, it would be the end of the road for the Carlton
Yeah.
Blues, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'll be fascinated to see does Max Holmes get up? Does Max Holmes get up for this one, or do they try to save him for that semifinal? It'll be fascinating. I am
Yeah,
with
and
you,
Jeremy
Cameron. Yes.
uh, Cameron, I just they just seem to keep playing him no matter how injured he is. I mean, on the weekend he was playing with a plaster cast on his
Mm-hmm.
arm
Yep.
and strapped up from both shoulders. He hasn't never fully recovered from injury, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that grand final where we watched him,
Play through the
with his
broken arm that he
arm,
had. Yep.
literally broke his arm and then went out and broke it again. I just I don't think he's been in top form
Mm-hmm.
for a long time.
Yeah.
I think they've actually been negligent with him, to be honest. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but other than him, I think Geelong still look very good.
I'm going to say this, and I don't mean I'm not trying to be a douchebag about this, but if I'm the Cats, I'm kind of loving that Sydney screwed up as bad as they because it takes away from the drama that is that release form with Jake Kalajasny.
Yeah,
I hate saying it, but notice how that story has completely disappeared since the
yeah.
since the Swans, and I hate saying that, and I'm not trying to joke again. But I just find it fascinating that everybody shifted away from that story and that story, both stories are tragic, and I don't like either story. But the fact that that one just disappeared from talking points has been crazy. I'm with you. I like Geelong in that one. There's too much experience. Like I said, is Max Holmes back? Is Max Home back or not? Will be the $1 million question for me. But even still, the experience of the Cats. Chris Scott is just an incredibly good finals coach. Love him on that. So I will also move Geelong on. Collingwood versus Adelaide, Adelaide Oval. Fascinating. A rematch from last year's finals. Pies, Crows. Who do you like?
Yeah, I think with being at Adelaide Oval during the finals, I'm going to tip Adelaide for sure.
Yep, I am with you. I think Isaac Rankin being back,
Yes, he
Pies
is on
coming.
fire at the moment too.
Yeah, he is absolutely in fuego. I'm if I'm staying up against Adelaide, he would give me nightmares as a coach trying to figure out him because if you take him away, then Jordan Dawson has fun. So it's going to be an interesting night at Adelaide Oval. I think the Crows playing better. They're getting healthier at the right time. I like the Crows in that one. So let's go to now the semifinals. You have Fremantle versus Geelong Optus Oval. Who do you like to move on to play Brisbane in the first preliminary final?
I think Fremantle would win that.
Okay,
Yeah.
so Frio move on for you. And then for me, I have Hawthorn and Free. I have Hawthorn and Geelong. For me, I have the Hawks moving on in that one. I think the rivalry between those two just continues, but I think the Hawks, when it comes to it, they bounce back after a loss. They get themselves right. I think they get the win on that one. And then on the other side, we have Adelaide versus Sydney. For me, I will have the Crows move on just because that is a bad matchup for the Swans when it comes to it. With no James Jordan, they have no Tagger in that one. Not a very good matchup. You also have Sydney versus Adelaide. Who do you see moving on to face Fremantle at Optus Stadium in the other preliminary
Ooh.
final?
Oh, I'm going to say the Crows on that one too.
Yep. So yeah, hate to see the Swans go out in straight sets, but it's just a bad matchup when it
It's
comes to
very
it.
hard to see how they
Yep.
can
Yep.
have
No.
a good final series at
No.
the moment.
They gotta either that or they gotta hope that they face Colling they gotta hope that Collingwood pulls a mighty upset and they could potentially on that one, but that's a difficult matchup there. So our
Yeah.
grant so both of us so here is how it shakes out for this. You have Hawthorn versus Adelaide in the first preliminary final. Who do you see moving on to play in the grand final? Will your
Mm.
brown and gold heart stay true, or will we see an upset and the Crows
So
move
that would
on?
be played at the MCG because
Yes, it
Hawthorn
would.
finished fourth.
Yep.
If it's played at the MCG, I'm going to tip Hawthorn.
Okay, so she has Hawthorne moving on. For that, I will have Fremantle as my representative. I think they beat the Crows. They would get that out at Optus Stadium. So Frio move on for me. On my side, I have Fremantle versus Brisbane on the I have Hawthorn versus Brisbane on the other side. I think Brisbane knock off Hawthorn there. I love your
Yes.
Hawks to death, but Brisbane is so good, especially up at the Gabba. And for you, you have Fremantle versus Brisbane up at Optus Stadium in this particular situation, since Fremantle has the higher seed in the finals. So, Frio Brisbane for you. Who do you have
Ooh.
playing Hawthorn in the grand final?
Have I managed to tip Hawthorn right into the grand final?
Yeah, you have Hawthorn in the
Um,
grand final, and this is who they're playing.
so Fremantle and Brisbane. Look, only because Fremantle and Brisbane have to play each other to go into the grand final in that scenario. Um, yeah, gosh, that's a hard tip.
Mhm.
I'm
And
gonna say Fremantle, but I
It
think
would
it's
be an Optus Stadium because Fremantle would be the higher seed.
yeah, I'm gonna say Fremantle just based on that. But gosh, that'll be a tough contest.
so,
In fact,
so okay, so
you'd
this
like
is
to see actually a Fremantle Brisbane grand final.
well, I've got that. You don't.
Yeah,
You have
well,
Hawthorne Fremantle in the
I
grand
I
final.
I I would if I had to just blanket tip from here to there, I would say Fremantle Brisbane grand final too. But
Yeah,
that's not obviously my Hawthorn filters got in the way.
that's it. It is not a problem. I've had that happen before. I've done that before. Okay, so we'll tip your grand final. Hawthorne Fremantle. Hawks get another premiership, or does Fremantle get there first in club history?
Gosh, I think we played each other in the grand final of 2015,
Yep,
and
not so
Fremantle
much of a
scores
contest.
definitely. No, it wasn't a contest back then. Uh, I think Fremantle would win that.
Yep. I'm I'm I am going to tip the same thing. I have Brisbane Fremantle, which I think some people would think, well, that's the Brisbane should have an advantage. They've been there. Fremantle hasn't. But again, Fremantle lacks for nothing. I think their defensive core has been much more cohesive, even despite some of the injuries that they've had. As long as Alex Pierce is healthy, I'm going to tip a team that has Alex Pierce in the back because he's been one of the best. He's been one of the best fullbacks in the competition when he plays. So I have Fremantle winning their first ever premiership. Fremantle fans, if they don't, please don't come after me on that one. I tipped Fremantle. Here's the thing: I tipped Fremantle Brisbane at the start of the year. Um,
Oh, okay,
blanket.
there you
Yeah,
go.
I that was my grand final tips. I tipped Brisbane at the start of the season to win a three-peat. So, but I've liked
Mhm.
Fremantle this whole year, so I'm switching my tip when it comes to it. So
Wow.
there's a little part of me that kind of even goes, if Brisbane wins the whole freaking thing, I'm gonna look like Nostradamus a little bit because that's who I tipped as the two grand finalists and then the premiers in the pre-season episode that I had this year. Again, not trying to toot my own horn here. So, well, that is it. That is all the finals tipped. Now, just for those that are listening, there will not be any men's episodes now until after the grand final. I'm going to let the finals play out and then we will discuss it as a whole. But there will be AFLW reviews because we're doing the rounds. I will just be doing the women for the next few weeks until the men's grand final has completed. Then we will do a season review to cover all of the finals and then cover the season as a whole. So for those of you that are wanting to catch up, there will be no reviews for the men's, but there will be W reviews for the next few rounds until after the grand final. So just really quickly on that, I want to make sure that I let Fee have a moment here because, as I said at the start of the episode, Chicks Talking Footy, the podcast, is back. You have
Mm.
no idea how happy I am over here because I get to hear the chicks. I love their analysis. I love what they do. So, Fee, I'm not just trying to toot your horn here. Tell us a little bit about Chicks Are Back. How much fun is it to sit down and talk with Sasha and Beck again and talk footy and be on the podcast again? Because you had quite the halftime break, almost a year with no Chicks Talking Footy.
Mm. Well, we've been going at it since 2016,
Yep.
and we really started because I mean, I personally was going to the footy with all women, and I knew that women made up half the membership of the AFL.
Mhm.
But when you flicked on the TV or the footy media, it was middle-aged white blokes talking about footy, and we weren't represented at all. And I mean, this was before the AFLW was even a real thing.
Mhm.
So we launched that year, and then, of course, that year, 2016, the AFLW was announced, and also the first ever Pride game was hosted between St Kilda and Sydney Swans at what was Etihad Stadium, is now Marvel Stadium. And we just jumped on a wave. It was like this amazing journey of meeting new people, being a voice and telling the stories of footy from perhaps a different perspective, giving voice to people that weren't traditionally the white straight men that were talking about footy. But we were talking to transgender players. We were talking to people that ran the AFL league in India. That's how I met you, Donny. Like
Mhm.
we were, talking to females that had pioneered in the space. We were talking to administrators, to women that had, even Sam Mostyn, who's now our Governor General. She was on the board of the Sydney Swans at the time, and one of the
Mhm.
first females to do that. So we just went on this incredible journey, and after a little while we burnt out a little bit. So a year or so ago we had a break, but we kept finding ourselves still talking passionately in our chats, and we thought we don't quite have the space in our lives to do a radio show and podcast.
Mhm.
So we've just put it together as a podcast now, and we've still got the same philosophy that we're passionate about footy, but we're also giving voice to people that perhaps don't have a voice in the mainstream media. Although that's definitely had changed a lot over the last 10 years.
100%. But as I've told Fee a few times, like when she said that the show was back, and I got to listen to it and to be able to hear their take on it, and I love it because Sasha's a coach, Beckdahl is an avid Crows supporter who absolutely loves her footy, and I absolutely love her excitement. It's so much fun to listen to your guys' banter. It is absolutely fantastic. One of my favorite shows. I have it automatically downloaded into my iPod every week. I listen to it just before the footy gets started on Thursdays, just after it comes out. So still one of my favorite shows. So happy that you guys are back. I'm glad that you guys have done that. And really, really thank you so much for hopping on the podcast. It's always great to sit down and have a chat, because as I've said many times, I like being an ally for, as you said, there aren't a lot of women that do these shows, no matter whether it's on TV, in podcasting. So to be able to give them a voice, to be able to have them come on my show, it's so much fun for me because it's a point of pride. I really love having some of my women co-hosts because they look at it just a little bit differently, and it's so great. So thank you, Fee, so much for what you do when it comes to Chicks Talking Footy, and thank you so much for hopping on the podcast again.
You're welcome. Such a pleasure to spend this time with you, Johnny.
Awesome, awesome. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for this episode of Donnie's Disposals. Again, keep an eye out. We've got more footy coverage. Again, unfortunately, the finals are come. This is the sad time of year as competitions, they crown premierships, and we end the season when it comes to the footy. So that'll do it for this episode of Donnie's Disposals, and we'll be back with more footy coverage very, very soon.